Hello, and today I'm doing the Astounding Science Fiction tag, even though nobody has tagged me and I'm feeling particularly unloved. However, let's get straight into the questions rather than dwell on my emotional collapse. So what was the first science fiction book that you read, and what did you think of it? Okay, so I'm pretty sure it was a long time ago and I'm struggling to remember. I'm pretty sure that the first science fiction books that I read would have been the Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi novelizations, things like that. I would have followed those up with Splinter from Mind's Eye, Alan Dean Foster, and the Han Solo, Brian Daley books. I was absolutely blown away by the first Star Wars movie when I saw it, and probably quite obsessive if I'm honest. Luckily I've grown out of that now. I obsess about different things. In terms of the novelizations, the Star Wars novelizations, they're on a distinct sliding scale. The first one, Ghost, written by Alan Dean Foster, is really good. The second one, Donald F. Gluck, not bad. And then the third one, the James Caan, seems to be perhaps relevant to the fact that the sort of Ewoks maybe made Return of the Jedi aimed at a slightly younger audience, perhaps, and the book reads that way as well. It seems more basic and more childish than the other two. As for the tie-ins, I think that Splinter from Mind's Eye would be a decent story, but Alan Dean Foster did not know what was coming with Han, Luke, and Leia, Vader, and it just would have been better off if perhaps it didn't have all of them, perhaps just one or the other of those characters. I really like all three of the Han Solo, Brian Daley books and recommend those two. Because I was into science fiction, my granddad gave me a book, and in it there were Sprague Le Camp, Ursula Le Guin, and Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451. So I'm pretty sure that Fahrenheit 451 was the first book that I read in science fiction that wasn't Star Wars related. So yeah, if I didn't like those books, I almost certainly wouldn't have read any further into science fiction, would I? So it's kind of a strange question, but hopefully an interesting answer. The second question is, what was the last science fiction book that you read? What did you think of it? It's like, well, you can click on the channel and you will see that the last review I did was The Lost Fleet by Jack Campbell. I thought it was pretty decent. Modern science fiction for me is retreading water that's been tried so many times before as to leave it unnecessary. Lost Fleet was okay. Wasn't very original. It wasn't, in terms of prose, well written, but the character was engaging enough, and it certainly was never boring. So I think I gave it a kind of fairly tepid review, but a thumbs up at the end. It's like, yeah, I kind of recommend it. If you love science fiction, what made you love science fiction? I think, again, strange question, given that I can't see too many people doing this out of just a pure desire for some sort of content if they didn't actually love science fiction. If I'm brutally honest with you, I think that what made me love science fiction was Carrie Fisher, or at least Princess Leia, because just glamorous, beautiful, feisty, strong, independent, just like absolutely had it all. And I think that, I was young when I saw Star Wars, really young, like 5 maybe, so it wasn't like a throbbing loin situation like it might have been if I was in my teens, but there was something there, like it's a real magic in that character. It's a shame really that Star Wars has done such a disservice to the female characters that have come since in its pursuit of political correctness, or the current narrative, whatever you want to call it. So what is your favourite science fiction movie? Well, for a long time, probably up until 2015-16, the answer would have been Star Wars. More so even than Empire, it would have been Star Wars. But things have transpired since then that have weakened the original trilogy. In the Disney canon, they've taken away from it. Just an example is that Rogue One, which everybody loves, I'm not keen on myself. They come across the AT-ATs at the end and the guy says, use the cables, go for the legs, and it's okay. But this is before Empire. So then the question becomes, why was it when Empire came and they met AT-ATs again, that wasn't just the given tactic, that they had to try and work that out So it's either staggering incompetence across the board, or it's a deliberate attempt to take away from the character of Luke Skywalker, because Luke came up with that on the hoof. It was like, wow, this is amazing, what a great idea. It shows him as a thinking, capable and reliable character, and you've taken that away deliberately. So Disney, for me, have done that. They have deliberately tried to take away from the other movies, or they're just the stupidest people on earth. It's hard to decide, but either way, I've just found that my feelings towards Star Wars are so meh that it has taken away my love of the original movies to an extent, which hasn't happened with the new Star Trek. Perhaps I didn't have the same investment in Star Trek in the 1980s and 90s that I had with Star Wars. And the new films were awful, but in a less insulting sort of way. Like they insulted your intelligence, but they didn't insult the current canon, or the previous one, if you prefer. So in terms of that, one movie that hasn't been destroyed, or there's a couple of Star Trek films, one would be The Undiscovered Country and the other is The Wrath of Khan, which I think is just, I always loved it. I always thought it was just a phenomenal movie, and I think perhaps that's taken over now as number one. In terms of more recent films, science fiction has there been that's particularly good? I mean, things like Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one was all right. Didn't like the second one so much. Didn't dislike it, but just didn't like it as much as the first one. Something like Inception, if you want to count that as science fiction, I thought that was an incredible film. The first Matrix movie was phenomenal, but the fact that it's had three independently disappointing sequels. But yes, Serenity would be up there. But in terms of its strength as an individual movie, I think that the TV series, for me, without it, the emotional payoffs in the movie are lessened. So therefore, I haven't included that as like my best. I would probably go with Wrath of Khan at the end of that, waffling, possibly Inception. So what is your favourite science fiction TV show? Well, growing up, it would have been Battlestar Galactica. I was really, really wary of the remake, the reboot, but that actually was pretty decent as well. Star Trek original series, Star Trek Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, even perhaps the first series of Enterprise, although I felt that they should have stayed closer to home with Enterprise and really explored what's the blue ones, Andorans, can't remember, and the Vulcans particularly, and the Klingons. Obviously, it should have been just about those three races, and then it just got a bit weird, and I didn't really like it. But Futurama, definitely Firefly. Hard to pick one. I would have gone with Futurama up to the point where it came back after being cancelled, and I'm hearing it's being returned again, and I'm kind of like dreading it. It's just like the magic when it came back was not there. So again, they damaged their own legacy for me rather than Star Wars, which is damaged by changing corporate hands. I'm going to go with Star Trek. I'm going to go with The Next Generation. And I'm glad almost that the meme culture has introduced at least part of it to a different generation. So question 6, what science fiction book do you feel should be read more often? I mean, it probably would say something like Fahrenheit 451 if it wasn't well read. Same with War of the Worlds. I would highly recommend it, but I think also at the same time some people are made to read that at school, so quite a lot you could pick from the Golden Age, Day of the Triffids, Puppet Masters by Heinlein, Asimov, Bradbury. You can't really go wrong. Philip K. Dick, I really loved Ubik. I loved Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Slaughterhouse-5 is not Golden Age, it's a bit later, by Kurt Vonnegut, would recommend that highly. Survivors by Terry Nation is a really good book. If you're only familiar with the TV series, I really highly recommend it, particularly because it takes place in a post-pandemic world, so it almost became relevant, perhaps. Who knows? Perhaps the 18th generation or variation of the virus that won't be named will be the one that does for us. Who knows? Recently, it's hard to think of something that's more modern. Legacy of Hero, I think, is from either early 2000s or late 90s. Larry Niven, Jerry Pournelle. I'd recommend that. I quite like that. What is your favourite science fiction short story? Well, I've read a lot of Heinlein, but it's hard to pick one. Asimov, I quite liked. I can't remember. I think it's The Voter. It might be Franchise. It's about a computer that picks a single guy to be representative of the whole population, and he's the only one that gets to vote in the election. And yeah, it deals a little bit with the weight of responsibility, and particularly his not wanting that level of responsibility. Doesn't really, I think, dwell on the fact that having that choice forced on you might actually affect the way that you vote. But I thought it was a great concept and really interesting, and I really liked the way it was executed. So I'm going to go with that, but really there's quite a lot of Heinlein that you could pick. Universe, really influential. Or You Zombies, very popular. There's a lot to choose from. You can't really go wrong. Anything that made the pages of Astounding Science Fiction magazine, and you've heard of the author. It was a Ray Bradbury one, the last one in the Martian Chronicles. It relies, again, like a Serenity, it relies on the previous short stories in the collection for its emotional resonance, but it's the one where the house burns down and it's completely empty, there's nobody in it, and it's just really phenomenal. It just has a real emotional impact despite not really having any human characters in it. So I'd recommend that too. That would be up there with the Asimov one. What is your favourite science fiction book? I think I mentioned quite a few under what book you feel should be read more often. Dare the Triffids, Puppet Masters, Ubik. They would be up there. Do Androids Dream? I'd probably put Ubik ahead of that, so that puts it in the running for some of the best. The Star Wars novelisation by Alan Dean Foster adds to the story of the film, so that's a recommendation, even though it's a novelisation rather than an original work. Something like The Circle by Dave Eggers or 1984, but that's as much for the message as for any enjoyment you'll get out of reading them. Yeah, not the best answer. I don't think I feel like I'm sitting on the fence, but that might have to do. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully this wasn't too laborious or uninteresting for you. And if you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, and stay tuned to the channel for a little bit more about Robert Heinlein, short stories, and things like that. What a hard sell. Who could say no?